And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. Just want to go ahead and make sure you know that it is our continuing series of team profiles right here for you. And we're up to Dallas, the Big D. Going ahead and talking about what's going on with the Dallas Mavericks. Go ahead and make sure you go ahead and check this out. Please like and subscribe so you can get all the NBA team reports that I'm doing right here at the Lakers Fast Break. But it is the Dallas Mavericks, and who better to talk about the Dallas Mavericks is a guy who is part of the Dallas Hoops Journal scene, covering the Dallas Mavericks and the WNBA as well. He also writes for Newsweek. My gosh, if you go to his Twitter, there's a whole bunch of ads, and you know you are big into the basketball scene when you have a whole bunch of ads. Indeed, it is, of course, Grant Afseth. Grant, great to have you here. Truly looking forward to our conversation on the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Definitely looking forward to it as well.
Absolutely. So let's get started. Should we just get the elephant in the room or the Slovenian in the room out of the way here in regards to Luka Doncic? Yes, we've been hearing it nonstop. I know you've been hearing it nonstop ad nauseum. You have a beat with the Dallas fan base. I know there's some lingering feelings there. Absolutely. We would feel the same. It was on the other end. I know that Cooper Flagg and the potential he has could quell much of that. And we'll talk a little bit later about the Lakers themselves and how Luka is looking over in EuroLeague here in a little bit as this is being recorded. But your thoughts on where the Dallas mindset is at heading into this season before we get into any particulars, players, movements, or at all. How is the Dallas fan base scene? I know there's still I see former Dallas fans or Dallas fans in our chat still having that leftover bad feeling about what went on earlier this year with the trade of Luka to Los Angeles.
Yeah, definitely. There's still plenty of people frustrated and upset about that trade. But I do think, in general, as you mentioned, the potential with Cooper Flagg, I do think there's plenty of people excited about what the potential may be. But I think there are some people that are kind of operating under. I'm still gonna watch, and I'm gonna root for their success, and I am optimistic, but I'm also going to definitely be paying close attention to Luka Doncic with the Lakers, and I'm still going to be angry at the GM for trading Luka. It's a very complicated situation for sure.
Absolutely. I know that I've heard the stories even recently about how he still can't eat out in Dallas, Nico Harrison, without still hearing it from the fan base. And when you make a move like that, you're taking a big risk. But for whatever reasons, ultimately were the reasons that they did it. They did do it, whether you want to say it's because they didn't want to commit long term to him on a supermax contract, or they weren't happy with the way he was taking care of his life as far as stuff outside of the basketball court, or what have you. The money involved, whatever it may be, it is done. And you did bring Anthony Davis into the fold with this team. It's a very interesting team. It is probably, I want to say, looking at it on paper, the best front line, or at least the most depth of any front line in basketball. I think anybody that looks at it has to see that. Let's start there first with, of course, Anthony Davis, who's always, I want to be a power forward. I want to be a power forward. I want to be a power forward. I mean, 6'11", 270 guy always says, I want to be a power forward. Okay. All right. Fine. I get it. I understand. Even though the statistics say that he's always better at the center position, but okay, mind you, if it makes him feel better, he is a power forward in Dallas for the most part. They're playing alongside two really strong centers. He has PJ Washington, who was just signed to an extension, not to mention wherever you're going to put Cooper Flagg. Tell me about how much of a, I don't want to say luxury of riches, because with the salary cap, it is going to be a little bit rich in regards to that front line. But at least now, what are the options available to you with that front line that you have in Dallas?
Yeah, right now I think they're definitely positioned well to have Derek Lively, as you mentioned with the CBA and salary cap. Him being on a rookie contract helps this situation a lot. He's struggled with injuries, throughout his career so far, but definitely has shown intriguing potential as not only a shot blocker, but somebody who can be a pick and roll partner. With some high level guards, like he excelled with Luka, of course. But in general, it'll be fascinating to see the shift in style for him in a bigger, sample size, because he's going to be playing, without a talent like Luca, and then also Kyrie Irving is going to be sidelined for a good amount of time at least to begin next season, and he typically hasn't played next to, uh, a big talent, like an Anthony Davis who operates inside the paint. With like a lot of elbow touches, low post touches, and then having to play off of that. So how he fits into that mix, in that style, I think is going to be a big factor. But overall, Daniel Gafford as well. He's someone that I think coming, off the bench a lot last season. He did start a good amount as well too. Like they mix and matched at times. I think with him coming off the bench as a potential look, he is someone that showed pretty intriguing ability to post up a little bit more than I think a lot of people expected him to do. So I think he could be someone that could tie together a bench group pretty well, as more of an option to dump the ball to and attack mismatches. But he's someone that hasn't really been a shooter at all in his career. So that fit, if they're looking for a little bit of spacing next to Anthony Davis at the five, I think they're going to have to look for Derek Lively to start shooting a little bit more threes. He showed, pretty impressive, workout footage, of course, not game footage, but workout footage, with, the Clutch Sports, pro day before he was drafted a couple years ago, really knocking down corner threes, especially. So, he's someone that I think his first three was actually a corner three in the NBA Finals last summer, and hasn't really been asked to shoot threes before that or really after it. But if that's something that they're going to need, curious to see the results there. And that's a big variable, because if he's a respectable 3-point shooter, at least knocking down the open shots that are naturally going to come from Anthony Davis, commanding a lot of attention inside the the 3-point line, then that really opens up things for the Mavericks offensively. But if that's not the case, then how they're going to be able to get that spacing and then also have room for players, not only just Anthony Davis, but like Cooper Flagg being able to play downhill to his strengths, and the players throughout the rest of the roster that may not be sharpshooters. That's a big variable for the team overall. But definitely, with the front line strength, lots of defensive talent. I think with Anthony Davis, as your audience well knows, his versatility defensively is a real asset. I think having time to recover from an adductor strain fully going into this offseason should help him with being able to cover ground, slide laterally, and really live back up to those defensive strengths that make him such an intriguing talent, by having his health where it should be ideally for a team going into the season, as opposed to that first game back suffering that injury and then having to recover and play through it whenever he came back last season. So that's also another really significant variable, because if you have his strengths next to a shot blocker, whether it's Derek Lively, or a Daniel Gafford, that's a really intriguing dynamic to have defensively. But if he's in a position where an injury down the line impacts his mobility, I think you're in a position like they were in the play-in tournament, where a team really aggressive from three can kind of blast you in a sense and create a numbers problem for you, in a head-to-head matchup, if you're not able to account for it with, Anthony Davis's mobility.
Once again, I'm on with Grant Afseth. Please go ahead. First off, follow him on Twitter. The good old Twitter right there for you. X, if you want to call it. Grant Afseth on Twitter. Again, he's part of the Dallas Hoops Journal, also as well, of course, for Newsweek, and he writes quite a bit more. Want to go ahead and make sure you check him out today at those various outlets that he's on, and of course, follow him on Twitter as well. Cooper Flagg has been talked about everywhere. I saw him personally in Summer League. As far as there, obviously he had his good moments, had some rookie moments as well. I mean, got a chance to put the ball up a lot as far as being able to do that. But the thing that obviously I took away most was his ability to see the floor and play make, which I think is one of his better gifts that he may be able to refine as he goes along in the NBA. When Kyrie Irving, who has suffered an ACL and is coming back from that, when he comes back into lineup. But until then, maybe a little bit more is going to be placed on him to be able to go ahead and facilitate to this team because of the fact you have D'Angelo Russell in there, veteran point guard. We know him from the Lakers. You're going to get what you're going to get with him. I don't know at this stage of his career if he's still a competent starting level point guard. We'll have to wait and see for you guys in Dallas. But tell us, with what's going on, what are the vibes right now in regards to what potentially could be happening for Cooper Flagg?
Yeah, I think right now, coming off the summer league performance you had mentioned, he had a really strong bounce back game against the Spurs after that first Lakers game, where he was much more efficient. Really was able to get to his spots effectively and score, especially inside the 3-point line. And I think we saw a lot of just the traits that make him special defensively in both of those games. Like as a weak side defender, he's really athletic, really long. His instincts are great as well. Like he can make a play in the paint as that weak side help defender. He can get into the ball on defense. If he's guarding, really like shifty players, I think he can handle that well, but he can also handle like bigger wings. I think that's, a really, great piece to have for any defense. And so I think there's a lot of, like day one, like excitement for that element of his game. But offensively, the progression he showed at Duke, I think with his jump shooting ability, I think that's something that everyone involved is going to, really hope he can build on, especially with you're playing with two bigs. Shooting is really important for the rest of the roster. But he showed some good flashes, in that summer league as well. And yeah, I think just overall, he's someone that, clearly has talent, creating for himself, as you mentioned, with the playmaking. If he draws double teams, I think he's going to be able to make the right play pretty consistently. And being, 6'9", whatever his like exact height is, like he can see over those double teams pretty easily and make the right pass and play out of the short roll. And I think the team is also going to be challenging him, kind of building on that point to really initiate the offense. Like Jason Kidd is someone who had coached Giannis Antetokounmpo before he really had that style of being like essentially a point guard, bringing the ball up and having a lot of the focus be actions running through him early in the shot clock. And I think that's something they're going to task, Cooper Flagg with not only doing, but also, getting experience, getting the offense organized, whether that's getting the ball to Anthony Davis and then playing off of that, or just, an early pick and roll where he's aggressive, trying to get downhill and a little, quicker decisions. Both of those are elements to really pay attention to. And I think, they have intriguing, upside from day one with that, where, we're going to really see, his comfort level attacking like NBA, matchups, how the Mavericks, really leverage that will be important too. Cause I think having a bigger lineup becomes a situation where teams are going to have a tough time matching size. And when switching being so prevalent in the NBA, there will be chances to not only leverage Anthony Davis against smaller defenders, but also Cooper Flagg. And just back to the point about spacing, how they're able to fully space out and take advantage of that overall like circumstance with size mismatches, I think is going to be a really key, part and a great problem to have, because that means you have someone on the perimeter that can really cause problems for the other team.
So with your guard situation, of course, with Kyrie Irving being out of the lineup, I'll start with him first. I know that there is the thought come back maybe as early as February, maybe hopefully they will err on the side of caution and maybe bring him back a little bit later than that. But again, it's always up to what his knee will allow him to do. In bringing him back, where do you think the Dallas Mavericks need to be? Because sometimes there's the thought, well, if the Dallas Mavericks are here, or if the team is here, maybe we shouldn't bring him back quite as fast. If we're in a position to compete in a very tough Western Conference and we're doing well, bringing him as that extra something, maybe to get a nice playoff push. Or if you're advising the Dallas Mavericks on how to proceed forward with Kyrie Irving, how would you do that?
Yeah, I think for the most part, they kind of have that built-in expectation as a team or an organization where you are already having the odds stacked against you with such a big injury from day one that like the long-term gain on the of just handling your business on a day-to-day basis for Cooper Flagg has a long-term payoff. So I think just honestly, whenever he's truly able to come back from that ACL injury, I think that's like don't rush it, of course. I think Kyrie's a very diligent athlete in regard. Like, I don't think he's going to come back from stuff too early. From my experience, he's someone that I don't say takes too long, but comes back at the right time. Some people end up kind of getting frustrated, like fan base wise, not team or media or whatever, but like fans, you can see comments where they start to get a little frustrated, and he reassures them that when he comes back, like I wanted to play and I always want to play, but it has to be at the right time. So I think like no matter what the external noise or expectation is, or your internal expectation, even, I think it's really important just basically handle it regardless of where you are in the standings, where he's coming back when it's right for him to come back, and let the chips fall where they may, because long term you're going to be in a position with Cooper Flagg that maybe even if things don't go well for you this season in terms of injuries and the way the Western Conference looks, I think that following season is really where you can get really aggressive and hopefully no major injuries happen next season for them, and you're in a position where you have that full training camp. You got to see what it looks like with Cooper and these other players that you have in this roster, and learn from it what you will, and then make your decisions next summer, and be ready to go from start to finish that following season. So I think that's kind of just the general read of the situation.
One of the things, like you talked about, is the spacing concerns that you have coming into the season, because again, the very excellent front line, but there's an issue of spacing, so that very excellent front line can get actually to where they need to go and not have to worry about being bunched up, things of that nature. In doing so, a lot of pressure goes into what's needed from Klay Thompson, as far as being the premier shooter on the team. He comes alongside with D'Angelo Russell, who you hope has a bounce back season, and also could provide very good shooting if you get some good performances from the past from D'Angelo Russell, which he's been able to provide. So your thoughts on that, as far as what that backcourt, what it looks like to you? Maybe Max Christie can take a step forward more consistently on the offensive end than he could with the Lakers, or he did with the Lakers. Defensively, we know what he can do, but offensively, it's been kind of like a mixed bag. He had the opportunity to be a starter, I think, after he got traded, because he was on a hot streak in Dallas after he got traded, but it kind of cooled off from there. Where do you see that backcourt as far as, and who do you think is going to be playing a key role until Kyrie Irving comes back?
Yeah, they have a very interesting overall just perimeter landscape, because there's not going to be a lot of minutes, like just 1 through 3 for their whole rotation. I think D'Angelo Russell, expectation is for him to start until Kyrie gets back, and then behind him, kind of in that point guard rotation, they brought back Dante Exum. He's someone that Jason Kidd has really valued as someone that can push the pace, guard multiple positions, and just play the right way, in a sense where he's not going to force it as a scorer. Sometimes he can be a little more aggressive, or it could be needed to be more aggressive as a scorer. But he's an efficient player in general that I think the coaching staff last year really valued, but with how much the coaching staff changed, it's easier for me just to say that Jason Kidd valued, of course. So that's someone to keep an eye on. Brandon Williams was someone they converted from a two-way contract to a standard contract late last season, and was someone that stepped up and had some really productive performances, including a 30-point game against John Morant in March. that I think is someone that can also provide some depth at the point guard position. But I think that's definitely going to change once Kyrie's back, where D'Angelo Russell will shift, to that more of that 6-man role, unless injuries or something unexpected takes place. But in terms of the wing rotation, I think the way the circumstances are, I'm not sure necessarily what the preset focus will be for the starting lineup yet. I think you have the option, as you had mentioned, of Klay Thompson, starting next to Cooper Flagg and bringing that shooting boost that the team could really benefit from. But they also have the option of going really big, which Jason Kidd has alluded to at times as being an option where PJ Washington can start at the 3, and then you're playing Cooper Flagg at the 2, and that's a really big lineup. Overall with that combination of players and two bigs in the front court. So those are the two main possibilities for that starting lineup. And that really, I think, changes the overall approach depending on who they go with. Because PJ Washington's someone that, has been able to knock down shots. But obviously when you're talking about Klay as like a sharpshooter, one of the greatest in NBA history in that regard, that definitely the contrast in style where, you're going to probably approach things obviously differently with the actions you can run and the sets you can run with, Klay Thompson shooting, as opposed to having someone like, PJ Washington's skill set out there with 2 bigs. So that's a key thing to watch. But in the bench group, I'm really, curious about how they're going to approach it. Because you mentioned Max Christie. They also have Najee Marshall. They have Caleb Martin as well, someone they brought in at the trade deadline who's going to make about $10 million, this season. And that's a lot of players to be factoring in, at that 2, 3, and then 4 spot overall. Because, I think there's going to be times where they go with smaller lineups where Anthony Davis slides over to the center position during games. Like, I don't think that's going to be like obviously their standard approach, but that could open up minutes for other players involved. But just on a daily basis, I think it's going to be challenging to like give out those minutes and balance it. And, I guess for lack of a better term, just keep everyone happy on the wing. So who they go with, how they approach the trade deadline as well, mid-season will be important to keep an eye on. Because I think, with the general history of the Mavericks under Nico Harrison, obviously we saw a crazy trade mid-season last year, but even looking past that in previous years, he's always been aggressive. So if he sees opportunity, with rebalancing maybe that wing rotation, how players perform with Kyrie out, I think will matter a lot for how they're going to view it naturally as they play out the season and see opportunity to make changes and, tune things up mid-season. So just definitely something to keep an eye on there, because I think Najee Marshall as well, his versatility is something that is interesting to think about, because he actually started at point guard a couple of games and when they had injuries last year. So they like his ability to handle the ball. He's someone that can play anything down to the small ball 4 position as well too. So they have a lot of options. Caleb Martin could slide down as well too, based off his history throughout his career, and having a healthy offseason for him I think will be really important, because he dealt with the hip strain that the NBA actually stepped in and gave the Mavericks the opportunity to avoid the trade, and they went through with it. And so seeing how healthy he is and just how effective he is with time off, I think will also be a really important factor, because it's easy to get low on players when they are dealing with injuries, and you're seeing the downside of what their skill set is because of that. But with time, I think he's someone not to overlook as well, getting healthy in the offseason and being able to have a full training camp with the team. But definitely going to be tough to balance those minutes out with Max Christie involved as well too. And as your audience is very familiar with, he's reuniting with Phil Handy as well, someone that worked closely with him during his time with the Lakers. So that's also something to keep in mind. Like if they can find, a good rhythm together and keep building his game and see how he, continues to grow in his career, that definitely makes tough decisions even tougher overall on the wing for how you're handling that rotation.
So before I ask you about the Lakers and before you let everyone know exactly what's going on with the world of Grant Afseth as far as on social media, what you're working on, projects, etc., I ask you, if everything went right, and this is a team that it's one of the most interesting teams in the NBA, in my opinion, because of the fact it does have a lot of players. It does have a lot of chess pieces per se. and do they fit in the right spot? Do all these puzzle pieces fit in the right spot? But there's a lot of talent. No one says the Dallas Mavericks don't lack a talent per se, but it just, can they find it all together, or can they play at the level that they need to until Kyrie Irving gets back? So let's say everything goes right for the Dallas Mavericks. How do you think it will go?
Yeah, I think if you have Anthony Davis firing on all cylinders and avoids injury, you're probably talking about a player that's going to have the usage to be an MVP candidate level player, or at least like fringe top 5 candidate. And that puts you in a really good spot. That also means that your front court avoids injury as well too. Derek Lively stays healthy. You're getting a strong developmental leap from him, not like into stardom by any means, but like just a step forward. You ideally see him be a successful 3-point shooter. I think you're also in that scenario seeing D'Angelo Russell in a de facto contract year, in a sense, with having an option, being able to re-enter next season, him live up to expectations, be a good complement to Anthony Davis. Klay Thompson, you usually know what you're going to get from him. Sometimes, shooting naturally is going to be up and down. So getting the best out of him, you're going to get a strong 3-point percentage season that lifts the group overall. And I think what you also in this scenario get is PJ Washington, someone who has played a lot at the 4, slides over and handles that 3 position really well, takes on tough assignments defensively, and shoots the ball well from 3 as well too. Like that's a variable throughout this roster where you don't have necessarily sharpshooters, throughout this whole 1 through 10, aside from Klay Thompson, but are capable of making threes. And if they're knocking down at a high clip, that really helps, the Mavericks offense with the style that they're trying to play. I think also a big injury scenario too is Dante Exum. He's someone that's really struggled with injuries throughout his basketball career. And if he's able to stay healthy, he's been a net positive by a pretty good margin for this team overall. I think you see Max Christie take a step forward as well too, where you start to talk about him as someone who, as part of that Luka trade, and if this all goes well, as like, oh, you can't forget about him as well, like someone that we are excited about in the future. He's still quite young, so that would be a boost for a team getting that result too. And then, just overall, like very new coaching staff, but has a lot of talent that people really respect around the league, and having that click and, be a strong, overall just collection of, basketball minds. I think, with that firing on all cylinders too, on a best case scenario, I think you're probably looking at a team that you could I know Dirk Nowitzki said they could be a top 4 team in the West. Like me personally, until I see like things like from an actual execution standpoint early in the season, see how it looks. I think it's tough to really put them in a top 4 scenario. But if Cooper Flagg is like this standout, phenomenal rookie of the year runaway player, where you're just blown away from day one with all the things you're putting on his plate, like initiating the offense and handling ball pressure. His shooting is at a high level. He's just this generational level defender that you're just like, wow, we really lucked out winning the lottery here. That's where I think they could get into the top 4. Health has to go great. Players have to have great shooting years. Anthony Davis has to be like a MVP level, or at least all NBA, like second borderline first team player, if not first team. And then Cooper Flagg just looks the part from day one at a level where you're just like, wow, this is an incredible basketball player. I think you're then looking at a top 4 team in the West, but more realistically, I think the play-in tournament, with how many things can go wrong for a team in a season, is probably realistic. But I think they have the talent level to be that like maybe that 4 to 6-ish range, avoiding the play-in tournament if they get Kyrie back at an early enough time and they avoid significant injuries. That's kind of where I see the potential for them. But yeah, I think it would take a lot of things to go really, really, really right for them to be in that top 4, as Dirk Nowitzki had mentioned that they're capable of doing. To be fair, he didn't make that prediction that they're going to be in there, but he did say like if they stay healthy, I think they had the pieces to be this level of team. And I agree with him in that regard, but a little more realistically, I think a little like lower on the outlook there, just because of how many games Kyrie could miss. Probably that 4 to 6 range in a realistic world.
So with that, I want to ask you this. The Lakers, of course, the individual who we talked about at the beginning of the show, Mr. Luka Doncic, his time is now finished as we're recording this in Europe, as of what happened earlier today as we record this. His time is done, but he's made a great impression on where people think he might be doing with the Lakers here, upcoming here in the next few months. He's already here in Vegas, where I'm at right now, a top 3 level MVP candidate. You still have LeBron James right there. Where do you see the Lakers as far as their fit this season?
Yeah, I do see them as a top 4 team. I think them managing to get into that 3rd seed last year is probably a very replicable outcome for them in the regular season. Getting DeAndre Ayton, I think, will be a pretty good fit for them. He's in a contract year. Will have a lot of motivation to live up to expectation, and playing next to a talent like Luka. Like I think we will probably see a little closer to what he was able to do with Chris Paul, having another elite playmaker. But with Luka, it's a little different, of course, because he's also an elite scorer, not just an elite passer. So that's a lot of attention he's going to command, and then open things up for Ayton in ways I don't think he's ever had at all in his basketball career. Plus, you're factoring in LeBron James in the mix as well, too, another player that commands a ton of attention on the court as well from the defense. So I think there's a lot of things that can go right for them with the way they've built that team. I think Jake LaRavia is another good piece that they added, like a 3-and-D wing that can knock down threes, be a good complement. I think he's a little more athletic than people give him credit for as well, too. So I think they did a good job of adding pieces, without being, super aggressive with assets and holding on to those assets. So I think they will have the option to, see if they need to make another move mid-season. But I think the things that they have, they should be a top 4 team in the West, barring any like significant injuries as well, for them. And, I see them as a genuine title threat. I think from my personal perspective, Luka has gone through that midseason big move in the past. Of course, he's on the more comfortable end of it in Dallas, where Kyrie was coming to his team, as opposed to him being shell-shocked by going to a new team and having to figure it out on the fly. But I think a full training camp with LeBron and everyone else involved, he's comfortable in LA now. He's coming off Eurobasket, where that's been always really effective for him, playing for the Slovenian national team, to get him in a rhythm, get him, in a good spot going into the season. And I think we're just seeing the overall natural maturity process for him, maybe expedited, of course, because of, the way the trade happened and all the media leaks about his weight and all that stuff. I think we might have seen an acceleration of it, but him having his body team around him year round has been helpful in recent years. But I think, you're going to see like the full product of all of that process, coming together and coming off the Slovenian national team performance as well, going into the season with the Lakers as, a really, really elite overall season where, he might win the MVP. He's had a tough time in Dallas with MVP, seasons resulting in MVP, of course, during that, prior time before the trade. But I also don't think they surrounded him with a great team ever from start to finish. And by that, I mean, even during the final season, they had to make their best moves in February. They clearly had a limited supporting cast around him for most of the year. He had to do a lot of, carrying as well, like with, Kyrie Irving getting injured at earlier parts of the season, throughout his time in Dallas. And they finally had the right pieces, multiple rim protectors with Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. And then they had PJ Washington filling in or replacing, I should say, Grant Williams as a great fit on the wing too. And, I think we saw a really great stretch run during that year for the last, post All-Star break, 20-ish games, 24 games, whatever it may be. And then that playoff run, but they never had with that group, like a full season from start to finish. And so with carrying that point into the Lakers now, he is now going to be comfortable in LA, have that full training camp, not only with LeBron, but the whole team. And I think when I have seen him have a full training camp with that group that has enough talent, usually that ends up being really, really successful. And I think that could result in not only an MVP for Luka, or at least all NBA first team season as we're used to seeing him, depending on what the narratives are in the NBA and who else has dominant seasons. Of course, you can't really predict MVP perfectly at this time of year, but in terms of title contention outlook, I think they have what they need to get to a Western Conference Finals, if not win the championship, especially with how depleted the Eastern Conference looks. Like firsthand, I think I've seen him against Oklahoma City really up close in a playoff series, with the Mavs. And I think, he handles that matchup really well. He's a really tough problem to solve, when he's, at 80, 85, 90% health, because no one's ever at 100% at that point of the season. So I think that will naturally be a big challenge for the Thunder to repeat as, title favorites. And then the Eastern Conference, I think he's a really great talent to have against any team that could break through in the Eastern Conference in a potential finals matchup. So I definitely really see him as that like unsolvable talent from a chess match standpoint when you get into a playoff series. And it's just a matter of having the right pieces around him. I think the Lakers have done a great job of reconfiguring their team around him.
Well, there you go. All right. Always appreciate anytime you can provide some insight. I mean, my conversations with people all around the league help formulate my opinion because I take a lot of values and stock in that. That's very encouraging to hear your thoughts on the Los Angeles Lakers. But before we head on out, we also need to hear some final words from you on what you're working on, all the great places you're at, and how to find you on social media.
Yeah, for sure. I do a lot of coverage on NBA and WNBA, focus on the Dallas market, like the Wings and the Mavericks on DallasHoopsJournal.com. But I also do, more like around the league writing for, those various outlets like rg.org, Ballislife, and other outlets as well. Focus kind of on those other teams because I like to definitely do a lot of coverage mid-season because you're around a lot of teams, when you're covering games, and it's always good to be able to tell stories, whenever there's other teams in town or you're on the road and someone's accessible and, playing well at that time, or just a good story in general. So definitely excited to be able to, do that throughout this season. And definitely going to have a lot of content, all throughout.
That's awesome indeed. But you can start your journey with Grant Afseth by going ahead on Twitter and following him at Grant Afseth. That's going to be in the description below when this hits. So go ahead and make sure you follow him there and check out all the great work on all those great outlets that he's on. Grant, what a great conversation. I cannot thank you enough for stopping by. If your busy schedule allows you to, I would love to revisit this conversation during the season if possible.
Yeah, definitely. Really enjoyed the conversation and would love to have another one, check in on how the Lakers and also the Mavericks are doing. Definitely.
Sounds good indeed. Once again, Grant Afseth, please go ahead and start your journey with his great work starting on Twitter at Grant Afseth, and also as well, of course, like you said, Ballislife, Newsweek, Dallas Hoops Journal, and more. So go ahead and check out all the great stuff that he is doing today. Grant, great to have you here. Looking forward to our next conversation on the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Lakers and the NBA right here on the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.